Westman. I'm used to that one.
Yeah, I know that one. We should be
Okay.
good now.
Great. Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, February 17th. It's 8:32 a.m. This is a meeting of Senate Natural Resources and Energy. We're continuing our work this morning on weatherization, and we took testimony last week. Interesting testimony from Paul Sillo of PAYS, P-A-Y-S, as well as Daniel Bissett and others from EESI and Bob Barton. And we were talking about the potential work of utilities to deliver services to their customers for weatherization. And it was innovative ways of financing the work. One, and I'll distinguish up front because I think we're going to have to be careful about it this morning. On the bill, the terms get used so far as I've been able to learn from our testimony somewhat ambiguously. On the bill metering, meaning you may have received services and in essence a loan, the utility that's serving you fronted the money and now you're paying back a loan on your bill, versus the to the metering version that we heard about from EESI, where no one at that residence or address actually took a loan. They are just servicing the cost of the measures implemented at that house. And should they move, the next person picks up the cost on that's being delivered to that same meter. So there are implications for that. The encouraging part of that story was that it might break the challenge of how do we get individual owners of properties to take on debt in order to do the work. And we also have utilities that are already engaged with all their customers, at least through tier 3, if not through sort of a symbiotic relationship with organizations like Efficiency Vermont, or BED delivers its own energy services, also working with Efficiency Vermont and VGS. So we know there's an ecosystem. We're trying to understand how it works, and we're also trying to understand if it could evolve in such a way to offer weatherization services to homeowners through an on the bill or to the meter billing system. And then the last little bit is we don't know to what extent these things have already been tried in Vermont or are currently happening. So we know there's been work underway, and so now we're checking in with the field. In essence, we heard about financing ideas. Now we're hearing from the field about how practical or practicable these things seem to them. So with that long intro, I'd like to turn to Christopher Burns of Burlington Electric. Good morning, Mr. Burns.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for having BED in to have a discussion about the overall weatherization topic. Again, my name is Chris Burns. I'm the Director of Energy Services, and my role at BED is to implement our energy efficiency utility obligations and responsibilities, our tier 3 delivery to customers, and also our demand response activities with customers. This morning, I'd like to just take a few minutes and talk about Burlington's potential weatherization market, our weatherization programs and other activities that are happening in the city you may be of interest of, and BED's current experience with on-bill financing to distinguish that from on-metering financing. But I'll get a little bit more into that, and then happy to take any questions. So a little bit about Burlington that you may or may not know, but I'll go through it quickly. So in our really robust partnership with Vermont Gas, we know that we share a majority of Burlington. And so we have decided years ago we're stronger together than apart. So the two teams work very well together on behalf of our mutual ratepayers. Why do we do that? Well, we know from some pretty good analysis that over 95% of our residential buildings use natural gas for space heating purposes. And we also know that over 85% use them for domestic hot water. And in older buildings, those are the two big thermal loads that you really want to keep an eye on. And from a weatherization perspective, of course, you want to know what the thermal load is. We also know that about 85% of our rental properties are individually metered for natural gas and electricity. So the tenants are responsible for paying their utility bills. And I'll get a little bit more into that later, why that's important. But that kind of goes into the whole split incentive paradigm that I think you've heard from the energy efficiency utilities before. You've got the customer paying the bill, but you also have the property owner who's not paying the energy bill, but owns the building. The other side of it is that we have several weatherization programs going. One is our EEU responsibility is the thermal energy process fuel that you've heard about, offering weatherization services to oil, propane, and wood customers. BED has a very small market, under 5% of our customers, but we do offer those services and have been for years. And those customers have the same access to technical assistance, incentives, and loans that the rest of the state does. And we try to partner with EVT. We do partner with EVT to make sure that the contractors in particular don't have different sets of rules. They know exactly what the rules of the road are, whether they're in Burlington, Bennington, Brattleboro, it doesn't matter. So though it's a small market, we're pretty pleased that we're able to serve those customers. Within TEPF, we also have a 110 unit mobile home park. It's the only one in Burlington, the North Avenue Co-op. Many of those homes, through our work with Champlain Valley Weatherization Service, the low income weatherization program, most of them are heated with propane or kerosene. We have been working with Champlain Valley Weatherization Service for years to button them up, but some are getting beyond their useful service life. And we're trying to come up with a rubric where we can get zero energy modular homes in there using our TEPF budget that helps someone make a decision. I'm not going to buy another used home. I'm going to buy one that is actually zero energy. And so we have 3 of those homes right now up in the North Avenue Co-op Park that we worked it. It's a partnership between Champlain Housing Trust, BED, and Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity. So that also is a partnership with EVT, who is trying to do the same thing in mobile home parks across the state. But we're really gratified about that program. I mentioned our partnership with WAP, Weatherization Assistance Program. Though a majority of what they do is in their partnership with Vermont Gas, BED provides financing to allow them or incentives to allow them to do a host of electric efficiency upgrades while they're in the building. So whether that's an old refrigerator, a better lights, power strips, whatever we can do to drop the overall energy load, we go after in a comprehensive way. So that's always been part of what we do. And then the last one, and that's our largest market, and I think you'll hear more from my colleagues from Vermont Gas, is that's the one that you may have heard us talk about before. And then we call it Energy Champ, and it's a platform that the 2 utilities say, okay, we share these customers, let's figure out how to do it well. If we're also seeing a growing number of heat pumps going into homes, apartments, condominiums, that means we're getting into the hybrid world where these ductless mini splits aren't doing 100% of the load. They're doing some portion of the heating load of the building. So VGS and BED have been working for several years now to say, okay, keep it away from the contractors, keep it away from the customer. How are we going to share weatherizing this building? And let's do it in a way that the customer and the contractor knows the money's going to be the same. All those rebate dollars are out there. Financing is going to be available. And how do the 2 utilities share that mixed space heated building? And we think that's a very reasonable thing to do. And we've had some good, early success with doing that. But again, the goal has been seamless from the customer's perspective, seamless from the contractor's perspective, because it's the contractors who are really selling this for us. Last 2 things real quickly. You may be aware of this, but the city has had a time of sale minimum energy ordinance for rental housing since 1997. And the city council passed that ordinance as a way to deal with very low vacancy rates in rental housing and in our older housing stock. And it basically says if you're going to sell your rental property, an energy analysis needs to be done. And if the building falls over a certain threshold of usage, 50,000 BTUs a square foot, you must make improvements to that building. And it's been going on fairly well for years, but the desire now is to speed it up, because some years we don't sell a lot of properties. And if the trigger is time of sale, you're beholden to whether the property sells or not. So through the Mayor's Housing Summit, the City Council passed a resolution saying we'd like staff to look at putting that time of sale mechanism and shifting it to the minimum housing code, meaning Burlington has a very robust rental housing inspection process to make sure health and safety issues are taken care of in our rental housing. The desire is to make energy efficiency an equal part of that. And that way, buildings that use a lot per finished square footage are going to be required to make improvements. That is in the planning stages right now. But I just wanted you to be aware that we're trying to, between carrots and sticks, we're trying to go after the market. And then the last,
sorry, Mr. Burns, I hate to interrupt. There's someone trying to come into the meeting, and I want them to hear that the number ends in 024. They need to identify themselves to our committee assistant, Judith Newman, before they can get in. Thank you. Sorry about that. Please continue.
No worries. The last item is to the financing part. So for about the past 7 years, we were fortunate enough to win a grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And it was a matching grant that basically allows us to on-bill finance for our commercial customers electric energy efficiency upgrades. And we've done about $850,000 worth of projects. Essentially, we use our EEU money as the local match, and then the remainder of the loan stays on the bill, the customer's bill for 5 to 7 years. And the way
Excuse me, the person on the phone needs to identify themselves.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Richard Donnelly. I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you.
The way we craft that is we try to entice customers to participate through crafting the monthly payment so that it has monthly positive cash flow, meaning that the energy savings are greater than the monthly payment, so that the actual project is paying for itself through the energy savings. Some customers choose to pay it off faster, but we find that option is very attractive to small businesses in particular, who are always concerned about cash flow, and very much so now. We went after that grant as a reaction to the last recession, when our program activity was so slow because people were so concerned about cash flow. And for Burlington, 75% of our electric sales go to the commercial class. So that's why we focus on the commercial customers, and EDA does not offer residential capital. So I hope that all makes sense. Happy to take any questions, and thanks for having me in.
Okay. That in the last case, you were just talking about the U.S. Economic Development Administration money. So that's a grant to you, or was it's low cost loan money?
Well, it's what EDA calls their revolving loan fund.
Okay.
So we have to have a 50% match. Their rules are no less than 75% of the prime rate published in the Wall Street Journal when you're closing the loan, and it stays in perpetuity. So as long as BED follows the federal government's guidelines for operating an RLF, that money just stays to be relent. And as a reaction to COVID, you may be interested in this, EDA reapproached BED and said, we would like to give you an additional $500,000, but this time we don't really necessarily need you to do the energy efficiency. What we want you to do at 0% interest to your customers is do COVID recovery. Whether that's enhancing the ventilation system, equipment that would help them stay open, retain employees, even to the point of putting in takeout windows and doors for restaurants, making edifice changes to buildings. and no local match, 0% interest. Get the money out in the economy as quickly as you can. So we accepted the money. Things are, as you all know, painfully well. Businesses are really, really cautious about taking on debt, but we're happy that we have it, and we're hoping as things progress into the spring, this will be a tool in our toolbox that could be very helpful.
Okay. So the first grant was 850,000. Is that right?
The first grant was the opportunity to draw down $1 million, and we had 3 years to draw down $1 million. Whatever you didn't draw down, you kept the balance, and that became your revolving loan fund capital.
Okay, and so you're getting payments back in from customers who are saving. Does that mean, in essence, you're going to have $1 million revolving loan fund to work with in perpetuity, or how is this going to?
Well, of that 800 and so thousand, that was a combination of BED funding and the EDA money. So we'll have roughly, 400,000, 450,000 as the perpetual revolving loan fund money.
Okay. Is it your sense that if you had more money in that revolving loan fund, that it would all be employed doing projects?
That's a great question. In the COVID moment, I would say no. I think my other colleagues can talk about what's going on in commercial lending. I think there's just the hesitancy from business owners to take on debt, as I said. Another Burlington quirk is about 70% of our commercial customers lease their buildings. They don't own their spaces. So if you're going to do HVAC, building envelope, major improvements to your buildings, it's a loan product is not what you're looking for in most cases. A lot of folks have their lease deals where they're required to do fit up, but in many cases, fit up. If you're a retail store and you do your lighting and your shelving and the inside of the building, that's your responsibility. But the property owner deals with the major components of the building. So that's another reason why. And EDA is very specific about, we want small, medium, private business. We don't really want municipal or institutional. We're in the business of helping business. So it's a limited pool for us. But again, we think, a robust toolbox that has a multi-pronged ability to help customers where they're at is what we try to position ourselves to do. No silver bullets for us.
Right. Well, that's a familiar theme in this room as we talk about the developing a weatherization program that, in a rough sense, looks to double and double again what's going on in Vermont in the next decade. And we've said we're not looking for some single defining revenue stream. It will probably be multiple streams that come to bear to help move the project forward. So I don't know if you if you're already familiar with the meter concept of weatherization work, and I know you already have a lot of tools in your kit. Did you ever consider this one in the past, or can you comment on the practicability of and the desirability from your point of view of having that? There is a question of where's the money come from, but I think that's a separate piece of it. It's like, even as a construct, is that something you've contemplated?
Yes, quite deeply. So I know Paul Cielo well, and his partner Harlan Lockman. They ran the Energy Efficiency Institute for years. In BED's early energy efficiency program days, we actually contracted with them to help us implement and design some programs. And that relationship grew to the point where they were developing PAYS and asked us to just be a test case, not necessarily to implement it, but at least to thoroughly unpack it and see where, the good, the bad, and the ugly of could it work? Where would it be most effective? And we did that. In fact, if memory recalls, we got an APPA deed grant to study it with them. And it's interesting. And what it came down to for Burlington was 60% of our residential customers rent. And how do you deal with those at the time, consumer protection issues were a problem. There was some concern about, how do you explain it? There was some concern about the admin costs of carrying that. How do you do it? But it's a very intriguing idea. For Burlington in particular, because we don't have a lot of thermal load, and you look at the set of measures that would give some robust savings for, that fee to be going after. You could, whether it's a weatherization project, combination weatherization heat pump project, after, the utility incentives buy down the cost of that work, could you come up with a really attractive number that a customer, no matter how many customers move into that apartment, would say, wow, this is a great deal. I'm glad someone did it. So yes, it's intriguing. I just always think about the care and feeding of any of this in terms of the administrative. And they're all details that can be worked out, but you got to take care of these. Once you start it, you've got to take good care of them. It's on the customer's bill, so you want to make sure you've got everything right. But it's an intriguing idea, and I know Paul and Harlan have been successful in other jurisdictions across the country.
Right. So on admin costs, was it your sense that the cost of administering such a program would be inordinately high? Was that the thing, or just that you were dealing with such narrow margins that might tip the scale the wrong way?
Yeah, again, I'm being very Burlington centric. We just couldn't come up with a set of measures that looked meaty enough for us to offer this to enough customers that it would be worth standing a program like this up. And so to me, it was just a Burlington specific situation. Could it work in other territories that have larger thermal loads? I would say so. And I want to be completely honest. I'm going back 15 plus years in memory, the last time we really thoroughly looked at this. So yeah, I may not have all my BED pays facts together, but that's my recollection.
Sure. Okay. And can you just say briefly something more about what you meant by consumer protection?
Well, I think at the time the discussion, had to do with, all right, you're asking the customer that's going to move into this apartment, I'm going to pick on apartments, to take on an extra $20 a month. And the customer is going to say, well, geez, why am I paying that? Well, we did the set of energy efficiency stuff and it's actually paying for itself. Well, prove that to me. I don't want to, who's verifying that $20 is a good deal? And the issue really was, okay, well, customer, if you have concerns, you don't have to rent that apartment. But in Burlington, there's not a lot of, pre-COVID, there weren't a lot of apartments to rent. The rental vacancy rate is so low. So there was just a question of that, explaining it to folks. And also there was some discussion about, well, boy, you're allowing utility money, bond fund, whatever it is, the tenant to pay for improvements to a landlord's property. And that had its issues. Shouldn't the property owner, be doing some of this anyway? Hence the time of sale energy ordinance in Burlington.
Right.
No.
Right. All right. Well, let me see if there are any committee questions for Mr. Burns. Senator McCormick.
Okay, just big picture. Are you satisfied that there are, how should I put it? The problem is the investment ultimately saves you money, but it's expensive to invest in the first place. So the deal is to get the savings paying for the investment right up front. Are you satisfied that your program has actually achieved that? I mean, they say poverty is expensive. You know, the people don't have the money to make the investment to get the savings. And so things such as taking the cost of the investment and rolling it into the bill, that kind of thing, can make it so it makes it available to people who don't have money to invest. And it sounds like that's what you're describing. I mean, I think that's your program. You look perplexed. I'm sorry if I'm.
Well, we don't offer a PAYS program now. I just want to be clear. We studied it, but we don't offer it.
So how do
Don't
people
offer
without
what?
a lot of money get?
You don't offer what?
That was Mark asked.
Yeah,
That,
we don't offer an on the meter pays like program that Mr. Cielo was describing to you. It
Yes.
sounds like
Thank you.
last week.
Yeah,
Okay.
I missed
But-
the vocabulary word. Yes.
This, but it sounds as though you do make it so that people who don't have money to invest can get into the action.
Yes, so that was
Perhaps I didn't understand how it works, but
yes,
I'm just asking.
that is true. That is for our business customers through the revolving loan fund from the Economic Development Administration, but that's specifically targeted towards business. We don't offer an
But
analogous loan program for residential.
But the savings on energy start paying for the loan right away.
Yes,
Okay. But that is not available for residents.
not on the bill, but our residential customers can avail themselves of the home energy loan program through the credit unions. And VGS has a very robust loan program with Green Mountain Credit Union.
And do the savings track the expense of paying off the loan?
For weatherization programs,
Yeah.
I would have to let my VGS colleagues answer that question. I think it certainly helps. Does it create monthly positive cash flow? I don't believe so.
What about break even?
After incentives, I know that VGS is going to join us this morning at some point. There's certainly a payback where you can get your money back in 6, 7, 8 years, and the measures that you installed are going to last 15, 20, 30
Yeah.
years. So there is a strong return on investment. Is it monthly positive cash flow? I do not believe it is. But again, I'm not in the natural gas weatherization. I'm not an expert in that. Could you?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I think though,
yeah,
our goal, it ought to be, I think break even is possible. I know people selling solar, which is not what we're talking about this morning, but people selling solar panels for home use, that they claim you can buy their product without any additional outlay of cash. I don't know.
It's a long
Is that
payback for
crazy?
Windows.
The long window.
all right.
Okay, thank you. That's
Senator
fine.
McDonald,
In the answer to the last questioner, you referred to your residential customers can borrow money, but earlier you said in Burlington, I think 38% only 38% of your residential customers were homeowners and 62 were renters. So did your answer for 100% or just the homeowners when?
Yeah, it's owner occupied buildings is where the home energy loan program sits. It would have,
So when Senator McCormick asked, you were referring just to 32% of your residential customers. The homeowners fit the answer that you gave, but the other 62% were not in the answer that are a separate category and are a separate challenge. Is that correct?
that is correct, but rental property owners can avail themselves of some of the loan products as well, if they want to do it on behalf of their tenants.
And you had a percentage of something like, my memory serves me, 80% are the tenants pay the bills, not the owner of the facility.
That is correct. It's more like 85%, and hence why the city has chosen to do an energy efficiency ordinance.
So as you share your history and wisdom with us, even things that have straightforward answers are not as simple as they appear. Mr. Chair,
Sir?
I've become lately critiquing our witnesses. I find that Mr. Burns takes a step-by-step approach, and it is followable. You can follow it, which is rare. So thank you for taking us through something instead of hopping about from here to there.
Well, great. If there are no further questions for Mr. Burns, so thanks very much. I mean, it seems as though Senator McDonald?
One of the questions was, you have to think this out ahead of time or it's going to cost you a lot of money. I think that was one of the things that Mr. Burns said. And was trying to understand that first of all, you have to figure out where the money is going to come from. If you can't figure that one out, you're not going anywhere. Is that correct?
Generally, yes.
And I guess the last, if your design doesn't work, you're messed up. And if you have a great design and when you knock on the door, people toss you out because they're unable to understand and appreciate the design that you've made that's flawless. If you can't market the damn thing, it's not going anywhere either. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it seems like the last thing would be the computer system that carries out the billing and makes sure that the accounting and the monies go to the proper place would be require the, I don't want to say the least creativity, but there are people smarter than us that can do that. But that's the last thing to be solved, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, every distribution utility has a different billing system. Some are more sophisticated than others, as I understand it. To be able to carry another tariff or loan as a line item on the bill, I would imagine some of us can do it easily and some not so easily.
So if we're going to endorse or turn someone loose to come up with a plan that tackles something we haven't resolved, those are the kind of the 4 building blocks that each are going to have to be answered before we jump into the pool.
Yeah.
One of the things that challenges us is trying to see the big picture and then break it down into parts. And Mr. Chair, I think we've had it broken down into parts this morning in a way that it has not yet been broken down. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Burns? All right, so thank you. Senator McDonald, so we should loop back to the list you just put together. It will be helpful for us to use that as a bit of a check-in, and maybe you can keep that list in front of you as we talk to other witnesses, because they'll have the same 4 building blocks they'll have to have assembled if they're doing something like that. So good morning, Ms. Cohen.
Good morning.
So we are really just, we had a pretty thorough review with Mr. Burns. You know what we're looking at. We're basically looking at on the bill and to the meter programming for weatherization. And we don't know if that's something VEC currently does or has contemplated. And if you did contemplate it, did you consider something like a to the meter or pays like program and implement it, or choose not to implement it, or you haven't investigated?
Sure. I think I can touch all that pretty quickly. So good morning. Thank you for the invitation. We appreciate the opportunity. And we also appreciate your interest and focus on this topic. Taking on carbon reduction goals in the thermal sector is obviously a high priority, and we look forward to being part of the ongoing conversation. At VEC, as we've shared, we have a pretty rural and low income constituency, and our towns, we serve 8 of the top 10 Vermont towns with the highest poverty levels and 3 of the top 5 counties. So we're pretty experienced with working with a lower income community, and in terms of making any kind of energy upgrades or investments, and some of the challenges and the opportunities there. So I'll share a few things that we've done, and that might inform your decision making going forward. We did listen to some of the testimony the other day a little bit, and one thing that struck us was a lot of the models that are being discussed are very relevant when you're working with electricity, like electric efficiency or beneficial electrification, because those directly affect your electric bill. When you get into the thermal space, at least for our members, their thermal bills, for the most part, are really separate and discrete from their electric bills. So it's kind of, not having that nexus to electricity directly could be a barrier for some of what is being talked about from our perspective. Not to be flip, but sometimes we say, well, why aren't you talking to the fuel dealers? Why aren't you, they're the ones that, maybe would be a better partner on thermal efficiency. As you know, we don't have energy efficiency embedded in our company. It's a separate, through Efficiency Vermont, but it does, of course, have bearing on the electric bill and our mission as well. Another,
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
I just wanted to respond briefly because I think the committee had the same questions when we first heard about it. Like,
Right.
well, where's the nexus that you would expect? And I
Right.
think that's sort of the intriguing twist on this whole thing. There doesn't necessarily have to be that ordinary nexus that you would see. It's that you as a entity are able to either receive funds or generate a bond, and that it's the sort of bankability and the stability of the utility as a utility that makes it the partner in these, as I understand it. So
Yeah.
it does take a sort of turning things around 180 degrees compared to the usual, well, let's look for a nexus, and then that actor should be responsible for sort of addressing their own the issues that arise from using their product. So it's not trying to saddle the electric utilities with
Right.
it, but that if we could design something that actually worked for you, became a source of income, perhaps, maybe even had a symbiotic relationship with the tier 3 work, that it could be a net plus. Of course, we're thinking of it as a plus to any utility that would be involved in it, not a burden.
Yeah, a few things jump out then. So this, this comprehensive energy, let's get out of our boxes. Let's think more comprehensively. We're all for that. We actually say even maybe go to a whole nother level. Is this appropriate for like local government or state government, where we're really talking about comprehensive energy investments and holistic approaches. This is transportation as well as thermal, right? Those are all challenges. So, and I think you touch on one of the challenges that we have, and as I go through, I'll speak, but getting people to engage and think about comprehensive energy bill, because we come up against this when we're talking about transitioning, say, to electric transportation. Your electric bill is going to go up. Or if you start going to utilizing heat pumps, your electric bill is going to go up. And when we work with members, we say, yeah, but look at your heating bill, or look at your automotive fuel bill. That's going to go down. You need to, look more comprehensively. And we're one part of it, certainly, but I'm not sure from where we sit with frankly, our credit rating and our resources and, other things like, if we're doing the financing, say, is that smart for an electric utility to risk our credit rating for something that's, pretty off mission when we really, or beyond mission, when we need to preserve that for just making sure the lights stay on, right? We got to make sure the poles are there. So, in our prioritization, that's why, not to say we're not willing to have those conversations, because with the tier 3 space or the energy transformation, there really could be opportunities. And I think those are appropriate for us to take a hard look at. But if there isn't that nexus, it's kind of a little harder for us to jump all in.
Sure.
So,
And I suppose it would
right.
depend a lot upon the source of funding. It
Right.
could be debt equity, or it could
Right.
be money that is basically appropriated through you or something,
Right. And the funding, I'll get through these, just have a few comments, not a lot, but the financing is really
Okay.
the tough
I'm
nut
sorry to
to
interrupt
crack.
again.
Oh, no.
Senator McDonald's been waiting with his hand up there.
So we just had a presentation from Burlington, and Burlington had to ask them this very same questions that Andrea is asking herself. That's where they had to start. Burlington gave us this morning statistics like 95% of their people heated with natural gas. That's not going to be the case in Vermont Electric Co-op territory. So what I think Andrea is sort of looking for is, what's the information we have to collect here in the Vermont Electric Co-op area about how our people heat, what they use, why they choose to use it. And when Vermont Electric Co-op citizenry and the type of housing and who rents and who doesn't, and who supplies, when that information is there to be analyzed, then the answers to those questions can be put together and you can develop a plan. And I'm Andrea, you're doing the same thing I often do, which is to look at someone else's plan and say to myself, my goodness, that's not going to work for us because we're different. So I think the challenge for your utility and where I live in Washington Electric is to how to ask ourselves the same questions that Burlington asked, knowing we'll get completely different answers, and that the plan that we devise locally will be different. But this is where we just found out yesterday that if we weatherize our homes, we've only done a third of the job. We still haven't gotten rid of the fossil fuels to do the next 2/3. So forgive me. You come to us often, and this is where you are. You need to.
Right. Well, and this is a starting point. We're just sharing.
Absolutely.
It's not like you have a bill, or I'm just sharing. For us, whether it's broadband or whether it's should we help people finance electric vehicles? All these things. We'd go to our board and we'd say, is this on mission? Is this a priority? Do we have value to add? Or not so much. So as I go through, I'll explain what we are doing, some things we are doing that we determined we do have value to add, and feel appropriate, and some lessons learned. So the financing is obviously the tough nut, right? And getting people to engage, even when it's like free money, is sometimes really hard. So I think an opportunity or a challenge or both is there is money out there, and it doesn't mean that people are in a position to even access or get in. We learned that with the Arrearage Assistance Program recently. That was like free money for your electric bill. And I think Riley Allen, I don't know if he spoke to your committee. I mean, we were really having a hard time getting people to fill out a little online form to basically get a direct credit onto their bill. And we scratch our heads. It's just, there's a lot of interesting challenges. People are very busy just getting the kids out the door to school and food on the table and, whatever it is. And we all need to figure out how to really do that engagement and that education especially when we're talking about this comprehensive energy bill that, this holistic approach. I hope the Climate Commission, can kind of come up with some thinking around that as well, because even if it's free money, sometimes we can't get people to engage, no fault of their own, just it's a challenge. We've learned a lot about this through our community solar program, and I'll just share that. We do have some version of, call it on-bill finance. It's financing is part of that. And even with that program, and I'll just share kind of an example that might be illustrative. Our community solar program involves sponsoring panels and getting bill credits. If you have cash, you can sponsor, pay up front, like your farm CSA, you write a check, you get your panels, you get bill credits every month for 10 years. That's great if you have money. If you don't have money, how do you engage? Well, we spent a lot of time and energy creating a financing option for our for anyone who might want to utilize it. But the idea was we didn't want it to be a barrier to lower income folks participating and engaging in community solar. So we have a partner through NeighborWorks Vermont. We created a really nice opportunity, and how it kind of works. Say your electric bill is $100 a month and you wanted to sponsor enough to cover your whole bill every month for 10 years. You can finance with our financing partner, and essentially over the course of the year, you will get enough of a monthly bill credit that will essentially be 1 month free of electricity at the end of the year. You can, pay on a monthly basis, you're saving money, and it'll accumulate to a point that if you're sponsoring up to cover a $100 bill, at the end of the year, you'll have saved a month's worth of an electric bill. That sounds amazing with no money up front. And we have, and I'm going to say this very slow because it blows my mind. We have 2 members out of 209 participants that are using the financing option. So we put a lot of effort and time to create this opportunity, and we have only 2 accounts that are taking advantage of it. And it is net positive on a monthly basis, a yearly basis, and over the life of the 10-year program, you're going to save $1,000. That's like $1,000 in free money. And
So
we're
you
not.
said two of 200 signed up that
Yeah,
way?
we have about 210 accounts that are using community solar right now, and only 2 of those are using financing through our financing. So it's like a version of on-bill. You're doing it all. It's all integrated. So what that says to us is we're doing a really crappy job promoting it. We want to do some more. So, that's fair. And we're like, oh, we're going to do some more. It helps us, to take stock and look and say, wow, this is a great opportunity. We need to be doing this. But it also makes us wonder, what are those barriers? Why people are not able to, take the time to engage, or just don't have the capacity, or are just worried about having an obligation going forward.
Right.
This program does not stay with the meter. It does not even stay with the member. If the member wants out, they can leave at any time. They are not obligated. So they get a pro rata share back of whatever they've, if they paid up front. So, there's some interesting lessons there. And if you want us to come back, we can, when you have more time, talk more in depth about community solar. We know the committee's interested in community solar. A few lessons, other lessons learned is keeping it really simple, on the bill. Bills are already really complicated with net metering, frankly, is incredibly complicated to manage on a billing. And we're obligated to get our bills right. Like we're regulated by the PUC. Like we have to make sure our bills are accurate and correct. And it takes a tremendous amount of time to manage the net metering billing, as well as the EEU now that we're going to gross versus net. We have to change all of our billing for the EEU. So we're doing a lot in that space, and it is complicated. So I just want to share that. And I think I touched upon the other things just regarding tier 3. If we see opportunities there in the thermal space and the weatherization space, we are very happy to have those conversations and see what makes sense to support our members and to support our business. We've learned that direct incentives are really helpful in the tier 3 space. And people really respond well to those direct incentives, bill credits in our case, we do. We do have weatherization adders for folks that utilize the tier 3 heating things like heat pumps and pellet stoves. If you have a thermally efficient building, you will get an adder from VEC for those tier 3. So we're trying to incentivize. We're very supportive of carrots over sticks when it comes to this. Probably goes without saying, but if DUs are being, asked, the ones that don't have efficiency missions, to be part of this, I think, enabling is great. Another potential tool, another potential opportunity, being a requirement would be more of a problem. We each have unique situations, our credit ratings, our challenges with what we need to use our capital for might be really different, just even with us from one year to the next, as we're making other investments in our grid to enable, energy equity. We, are going to use it for storage and grid upgrades and meter upgrades. Right now, that's where we're using our capital for our system maintenance plan. So we, of course, never mind if we're enabled to do things, but we would push back a little if we're being required to do something in this space right now. I guess that's big picture, and happy to come back as you dig in more to this
Right.
or answer questions.
Sure. So one thing for you, and by way of reassurance to witnesses still getting ready to speak this morning, guests getting ready to speak this morning, is that we're not trying to nail anything down today. We're just trying to hear from the field and get the conversation started. We've actually talked about creating a work group for the summer and fall to come back with a package of funding options for next January. And so we're just trying to, vet some of the ideas and get the conversation started. And of course, we're not looking to burden any partner. I'm thinking, for me, in the back of my mind, the Farm to Plate program is a bit of a model where it created positive. No one was a goody two shoes in that whole sort of cycle of harvest, market, compost, back to the farm again. But
you and I worked on that way back when we had different hats on, remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's a great model.
And so it became kind of a virtuous circle, and everyone could look out for their own interests, but the relationships were defined in a way that you doing well helps someone else in the circle do well. Or at least created an opportunity for them. So I think underneath this is where I'm thinking of it is there the same opportunity sitting here where your success will open the door to other people succeeding?
Yes, and we appreciate and push us a little to think outside. We get a little heads down focused on, the short term and like I said, keeping the lights on, keeping things cost effective, and we should, but it's also good for us to be, at the table to think outside the box and some of these creative ideas. So thank you in advance for that.
All right. I'm not seeing any hands up, and I am noticing that we're running a little long, but that's okay because we're having good conversation.
Right.
So if
all right, well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Cohen. With that, I'd like to turn to Team VGS. I know that Ms. Smith is back and Mr. Donnelly's with you. So you've heard the conversation so far. You know what we're trying to test the waters on. And particularly, we don't know if you've already done on the bill metering or to the meter programming either. Ms. Smith, we can't hear you yet. I'm not sure why. Not quite yet. And Mr. So there's no, your mic is, from our side, the mic looks on, but we don't hear any voice yet. So how about this? Maybe if you want to mess around with it for a minute, or we could go to Mr. Castonguay from GMP.
Mr. Chair,
And-
is there anything on our side that, I don't know, Jude, if there's anything that we need to click or can be helpful with?
No, because she appears to be on mic.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
So you're not the only one who's had this happen. Sometimes they have to restart. Sometimes they just call back in and it's solved. So why don't we go to GMP and we'll come back to you. Try whatever you like, and we'll see you again shortly. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Castonguay. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. And again, for the record, my name is Josh Castonguay, Chief Innovation Officer at GMP. So yeah, I don't want to repeat what Ms. Cohen or Mr. Burns have already said. So I'll walk through what GMP has done over the years, some of the programs that we've tried out, and then happy to take any questions. So stepping back, so we've looked at this space. I'd say going back to, I don't know, a decade or so ago, we started working. Actually, started in the city of Rutland, partnering with folks like NeighborWorks and homeowners in the town and city of Rutland to try out what at the time we called an e-home. Was basically to help do that one-stop shop, weatherization, heat pump, storage, solar kind of conversion, to see if you could make a model work that was simple. As Ms. Cohen said, like keeping things simple is obviously really key for customers and to help accelerate this. We did both on-bill financing, where we were supplying the capital, and on-bill repayment, I think you call it, with in partnership with NeighborWorks, where we used our bill and passed through low interest loans from NeighborWorks in that case. And that was to that component was mostly for around the weatherization. From that, we did a few different iterations on the weatherization side. It's interesting. And again, this was 10 years ago, but you found that there's a range, obviously, like anything, where it can be a little bit to a pretty expensive project in the home, depending on what the home needs and what the customer is looking for. We did a program with a partner where there was a small amount of weatherization in a home, mostly kind of the air sealing type of stuff, and in partnership with Efficiency Vermont, that was able to be really low cost for the customer and didn't even need to actually utilize the bill or anything like that. And all the way up to a full community approach, where we look to do sort of that pay as you save model with a number of customers. And found, like, as you'd expect, the price of fuel oil and the price of fossil fuel is a big driver in the economics of these types of programs. I think, getting to, I think is either Senator McCormick or Senator McDonald had mentioned that, trying to get to that cash flow positive, make it pencil out quickly for customers was really important, because there's the broader payback, but I think in terms of what really works for customers is that they're seeing the benefit immediately, and how do you make those numbers work? So we've done programs with heat pumps, where we've actually tried a few different models there. We've done on-bill financing, where GMP was the lender. Then we transitioned to another model where we partnered with a local credit union and just helped to make it simpler for the customer to get into a heat pump that included service and maintenance and that sort of thing, with a third party providing the lending. And now we are doing more of a straight incentive through Tier 3 in Vermont, and that's going really well. And the customer can ultimately decide still to borrow if they want to, or to pay outright for the program. And we do similar things in the battery storage space. there we actually are providing the financing that we're looking at more like a full wrapped grid asset. So where the battery storage is providing electric reliability to the customer, and it's providing us with a resource to manage peaks and reduce costs for all of our customers. So that we provide as an on-bill payment for customers, as well as having a separate battery program where customers can also go do their own financing and get an incentive from GMP for the battery storage. So, you know, what we have not yet done is the to the meter approach. It's something that we've looked at quite a bit, have not tried a pilot or a program around that at this point. But some of the things that we've learned over doing some of the community programs is it's a very intriguing idea. I mean, I think some of the concerns when you look at especially weatherization is it can get more expensive, and customers' ability or willingness to take on the debt can sometimes be a bit of a barrier. Not to mention, of course, the payback and seeing the cash flow positive. So that is a potential way that that sort of to the meter approach is a potential way to help get over some of those barriers. You still have the question, that everybody has raised around. You've got the source of funding. If it's a loan or something, is there some kind of guarantee there when you don't have it direct to a person? And then you've got just the uptake. As Ms. Cohen had said, like one of the hardest parts is definitely getting customer uptake in the programs and figuring out a way to streamline it, make it simple for customers that have a lot of other things going on in their lives, quite frankly, and weatherization is just one more. So that's a quick, I think I hit, Vito, where the last one, most recently we're partnering with Vita to do on the transportation space, looking to make it really simple for customers, mainly commercial customers, to implement charging infrastructure. And again, it's that whole approach of trying to make it as turnkey as possible, which I think may apply here, and the one-stop shop thinking. So we've got a lending partner. We've got a bill that we can utilize to pass through the costs that include the financing as well as any operational charges. And we've lined up installers to go out and do the work. So all a commercial customer has to do is say, I want 2 charging ports at my business, and it can all be taken care of. So that, comprehensive packaging, we think is a good approach. And again, that's in the transportation space, in the EV charging space, but pulling all of those things together, and we're currently running a pilot that's doing that. So I'll pause there for a minute.
Quick question on so the eHome projects in Rutland, and I think the whole town version was Town of Addison. I went to a very upbeat rollout, standing out in front of the town hall there. I don't know how many years ago, it seemed like the challenges, I understand it in the end, is that although it was seemed to be a very attractive offering, we ran into human behavior that said, I'm less comfortable signing up than you might have guessed.
Marketing.
Yeah, the town of Panton,
Panton,
that program. That's right. I think it is something to keep. It sounds really obvious, but at the end of every one of these programs is the customer. Is the person that needs to make the decision to either to take on the debt, to do the work, and it's challenging. Again, like folks have a lot of things going on, a lot of other things to think about, especially now. But the cost, you had those competing factors. Low fossil fuel prices does makes economics more challenging for any of the fossil fuel reducing initiatives. And that's right. What's interesting about weatherization is that today it's mostly a fossil fuel reducing initiative, and it's a good carbon saving initiative. As we continue to electrify, as we move to heat pumps, it actually becomes an electrical efficiency measure as well, because now your heat source is electricity, and it's helping you to reduce your electrical consumption. But yeah, Mr. Chair, that's right. We had customers kind of signing on to the debt of the weatherization project, and the payback challenges, especially the cash flow positive, trying to get there quickly, was one of the challenges during that project.
Sure. Well, I'm thankful that you ran these pilots, because we ended up getting real world feedback. Like
For sure.
Senator McDonald has come back to marketing several times over. Senator McDonald.
So perhaps on marketing, but I want to, there's no one left on this committee that was here when we had discussions about the gas pipeline going to Rutland. And at that time, there were proposals to look at the savings to Rutland customers when natural gas got to the Rutland area, and to say, we recommend that we take a fraction of those savings and set a threshold for solar on homes or group solar in the Rutland area to customers that are going to get natural gas, that natural gas is coming, and that part of the build out of the natural gas will also result in some reduction of carbon. And none of the three senators that currently represent Rutland today in the Senate were not the senators who were here when we offered that. And it was soundly rejected that very same sort of thing that we are talking about today as being the future was dismissed out of hand in the last decade. But that was a self-serving funding source. It would have reduced carbon use. It would have done a variety of some of the things we're talking about today. And it was relatively innovative, and it was unmarketable at that time. So that's our, I think that's our challenge, and we've seen I just wrote myself a note here on marketing, as the last witness was lamenting people's unwillingness to take on a debt for this goal. Yet last week, we sat in frustration, listening to how people of lower income will willingly take on, what was it, 15, sometimes 17% interest rates to buy used automobiles that are going to be in the junkyard before they're paid for. So someone that's out there squeezing poor people and managing to market something that is totally counterproductive. And here we're struggling to marketing something that is uplifting rather than driving people farther down into poverty. So Mr. Chair, I have unbridled enthusiasm for what we're tackling, and I'll stop.
Okay, Senator Westman.
This is a question for you, Chairman Bray.
Sure.
When Paul Cielo came in a week or so ago, I asked what the companies that were doing this in other states were using for marketing materials to their customers. Have we received anything back?
Yes, it came, I think, yesterday afternoon. So I don't know if
because I hadn't seen that, and I think it's important to see what other people that have already started this have been using for marketing materials with customers of those companies.
Right. Let me just check in with Jude while we're on this. Jude, I can't remember off the top of my head if you got copies as well. And if so, if you could just email the committee and post them to our website, that would be great. If he actually just sent it to me, then I will send them to Jude and we'll do the same.
Okay.
So.
I would also say that because there's more than one example of companies that have done this. Do we know if there's anybody that's more successful at this that out there that has already done this, so we could hear from them? Because we're hearing themes of that you got to get people involved in how do you do this, and I somebody's got to have done this the right way.
Right. So
Or
thank
we
you for that
could-
question. I like,
Or we
these are
could learn
great
from
pictures.
their
They're-
mistakes.
Yeah, these are pictures right down the center, so I can hit them. He also included 2 utilities and people at them that we could speak with.
Awesome.
So we'll follow up with someone who's done it and having success. So
Awesome.
thank you for checking in on that request. Great. If there are no further questions for Mr. Kassengay, thanks very much. And we appreciate that, GMP keeps plugging away with different pilots trying to break through these barriers that are holding us back from getting to things in everyone's best interest.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Smith, I see you back again, and let's
Can
see
you
what
hear me?
happens this time. And we certainly can. Thumbs up.
That is the stuff that nightmares are made of when you can't turn your mic on and you're supposed to be doing something important. So glad
Sorry
I'm
to
on.
realize that one.
Glad I'm on. And just a reminder that I'm Tiana Smith. I've gotten to speak to you a couple of other times this session. I have with me today Richard Donnelly, who is our Energy Innovation Manager and running our energy efficiency program. So my colleagues have done a great job of teeing this up. And so I will probably keep this fairly quick.
Sure.
I think stepping through this as how we currently offer financing to our customers, what we've looked at in the past, and then I probably will turn it over to Richard to talk about what we're contemplating in the future and how we're thinking about designing this is a good approach. So I do want to just echo and reiterate everything that you've heard today from VEC, from BED, GMP. This is a challenge. Participation is a challenge across a lot of these programs. And I think part of the reason why on-bill financing can look so attractive is because it takes away the complications. It might be complicated on our end of things to do the administration, but for a customer to be able to just pay something back on the bill, really removes a lot of the, having to think and going through the loan process and things like that. So certainly an attractive thing that I know many utilities over the years have looked at. Currently, VGS offers financing, and Chris Burns went over this quite a bit, but we offer financing for weatherization and we offer it for high efficiency equipment. Those are 2 ways we offer financing to our customers, and we do that through a partnership with Green Mountain Credit Union. The term of those loans is anywhere from 0% to 3.99%, anywhere from 3 to 5 years. We can extend that time and have a bit higher rates should we want to take that on a case-by-case basis. But basically, VGS buys down the loan. And to the earlier question, as to the cost effectiveness of this that Senator McCormick brought up, the term of those loans is around, on average, 5 years. The cost effectiveness of the measures may be 10 years, 15 years, and so it goes a lot longer. So while we do look at the cost effectiveness of our overall programming, it's not necessarily through the financing that we see a break-even point necessarily, or a cash positive point because of that difference in the savings and the term of the loan. We do offer a sense of on-bill financing right now, not through energy efficiency, but through our rental program that we have, where customers can rent water heaters and they can actually rent conversion burners when they are converting off of fuel oil and getting onto natural gas if they're not able to either afford or maybe it's not a good application for them to put in new high efficiency equipment. And so that is a line item that they have on their bill, and again, something that we allow them to pay over a period of time, 2 to 3 years for conversion burners, and longer for water heaters. And so that on-bill financing is something that is part of our current offerings. In the past, I think the mantra, many of you may know Eileen Similardes. She, for a very long time, when we would talk about on-bill financing, the mantra was, utilities don't make good banks. And I think what that means is both for the administration piece, when you think about tracking the amortization and things like that, it's not really our business model. And so partnerships with credit unions and banks that this is what they do for their work has been more successful for us in the past. It's a bit different, obviously, with equipment rentals, because we're able to put that just directly on the bill. So we did at one time in the pretty distant past offer on-bill financing. Again, just because of some of the administrative issues that I know Chris Burns was alluding to earlier. It's just something that we got out of the business of, and again, just partnered with Green Mountain Credit Union in order to remove some of that administrative burden. As we look to the future, and we talked to you about our weatherization program and our desire and our efforts around really dramatically boosting energy efficiency, there's a couple of things that we're thinking about as we look to the future. You've heard from EESI, which obviously offers an attractive program. I know you know a little bit about PAYS as well. We really want to think about ensuring that whatever program we approach, the focus on low to moderate income really ensures the protection of those customers. So when you think about it from a landlord standpoint, if they're able to borrow something on the backs of customers that are then paying it back through their bill, is that really the best approach? Is that something we should be thinking of? Ultimately, will they get those cost increases through rent and things like that? So that's one consideration we're looking at as we look to the future. I do think that this could be a pathway to net zero. There are really, for customers that want to approach net zero, this is a program we've worked on through the great collaboration that we have with Burlington Electric. Those are high capital costs to accomplish what may be needed to go net zero. And so, creative financing, looking at, to the meter or to the bill are ways in which we can accomplish that. And so with that, Richard, I see that you're on here. I don't know if you have anything that you want to add about your experience in this or things that you're thinking about with our new residential program, but I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Tiana. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great. And again, I apologize for my technical difficulties this morning. My power is out here and I had to connect to the cellular network. So thank you for bearing with me. And also thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to talk about weatherization and financing, which I've spent quite a bit of time with over my years at Efficiency Vermont and now Vermont Gas. The story I'd like to tell this morning is really about the response to financing that our customers have demonstrated over the past couple of years. Just in the last year alone, 2020, we've doubled the number of home weatherization and equipment loans over 2019. And that actually represents a tripling of 300% increase of the dollars borrowed as well. So 2019, our financing partner loaned out about $250,000. And this past year, our financing partner made about $840,000 loaned out. So you can see this is quite a response from the market in terms of customers seeing the 0%. It sort of grabs their attention, plus some very attractive rebates that were available for customers and that we're continuing on in 2021. It's obviously these probably folks taking on debt, making that decision around 0%, or have to pass the credit test of the financing partner. They have to pass their credit worthiness. For those who don't, we have an opportunity to guarantee that loan at VGS. But this is mainly a market rate type of program where folks who have jobs and good credit ratings are able to access. So the focus, I think the focus in the future will be on more how do we set up the type of financing program that is going to help us accelerate the adoption of weatherization with low, moderate income populations. Today we have, and I wasn't on the call earlier, so I don't know if Chris Burns mentioned this, but we have a sort of a renter rebate here that pays the landlord for weatherizing the multifamily properties up to 75% of the project costs. There's a cap, $10,000 on a multifamily home, but this is where the tenant pays the bill. So the landlord gets the benefit of improving their asset, making their asset not only more comfortable and affordable for their tenants, but also the other benefits that weatherization brings in terms of protecting their building from air infiltration, mold, and then also ice dams and things like that, which tend to wear and tear on the building itself. So there's a 75% project rebate, and they can also finance their project at 0%, or if they want to extend it at 3.99%. So that seems to be a really sweet spot. We've had a lot of success with landlords taking us up on that project rebate. The other thing that goes into that equation, of course, is relationships. BGS has been weatherizing homes for decades now, and before we were an energy efficiency utility, and now as an energy efficiency utility, and we have lots of relationships with landlords because we're also their energy supplier. So we leverage those relationships, in terms of getting new efficient equipment and doing weatherization projects on their homes. So I'll stop there for a moment and see if there's any questions about that.
I'm looking to see if there are committee questions. No, I think that's it. So thank you for filling us in. And I do have one quick question. When VGS puts money towards either a buy down or grants, does that become part of your rate-based discussion? Is that an equity investment, and so you can recover that, or how does the money work from the utility side when you have money on the table in these transactions?
Sure. The efficiency component of VGS is we're actually the energy efficiency utility status, the same as Efficiency Vermont. So we are using ratepayer funds to both buy down interest and provide rebates for the customer.
Okay, so you're not taking on any debt of your own to finance the work?
Well, it's a good question, and I have a second answer for you. In this latest cycle of the demand resource planning with the Public Utilities Commission, VGS has extended the ratepayer portion of their budget with our own capital to basically leverage greater impact for energy efficiency goals. We are using that investment and then amortizing that investment out over 15 years in order to minimize the ratepayer impact. So we have dollars from ratepayers, and then we have dollars of our own that we're investing to extend our budget.
Okay. Great. Well, so more to learn on that. I mean, there's the concept, and then there's the money behind the concept that we're working our way through. But this has been really helpful to, I think the encouraging thing to me is that there's been a lot of experimentation and innovation out there amongst providers, and that there's no cookie cutter answer, but we'll continue to work on this, and you've helped us understand more clearly the challenges to be worked through. And so again, we need to move a bill that says this explicitly, but I think through a working group, we would seek to engage all the partners that are out on the ground and doing this work in crafting proposals for next legislative session in terms of how you actually implement. All right. So committee, we've run a little long. And in order to gain a little bit of time, I would like to ask us just to take a 10-minute break. So we'll be back. Hate to be using exact numbers, but I don't want to drift too late because I know we have people who have other obligations. So at it's 9:57. At 10:07, we'll reconvene, and to Ms. Collins, who's in the wings, we won't cut you short. We'll run a little long on the other end and get ourselves back on schedule. So